But that's what resting in it is just being comforted, being held, just like you had just banged up your knee and you had been held by God or been held by a parent. And there's stories in the Bible and there's truths in the Bible that we can go to that are kind of places where we can just kind of rest in Him, right? You know, we all have favorite Bible stories. We all have stuff like it's our favorite place to go in the Bible. Like, what's some of y'all's favorite Bible stories?
David and Goliath.
David and Goliath. Yes, I love that one. What's another one? Jonah in the whale. Yeah. Esther. That's one of my favorites. I love that. I love the book of Daniel too. I mentioned that I think last week. It's one of my favorites. What else? Anybody else?
I was like Gideon with the fleece. I always thought that was so cool.
Yeah, Gideon and the fleece. Gideon just in general is one of my favorites. Anybody else? Joseph and what?
That's a Jezebel.
Jezebel, yeah. So, all right. So, you know, anybody else? Okay. And I know it's hot in here, but you know, we'll have some fun, okay? But one of my absolute favorite stories in the entire Bible is the woman at the well. That was one of the first places that I really connected with as a young Christian. When I first got saved, I was told, just like most people are told, read the book of John. That's where you want to start out at. And if you ever ask me, it's like, you're like, man, I want to start reading the Bible. Where do I need to start out at? I'm going to tell you the exact same thing. I'm going to tell you to start out with John. John is a very simple book to understand, but it's also incredibly complex throughout the entire thing. But it's simple to read. In the story of the woman at the well, and we'll talk about why, it really connected with me, and it became one of my resting places. When I have a hard day, when I have a hard week, I like to come here, and I like to hear the truth that God is teaching us through this word. So in John 4, and we're going to read 3 verses, 7 through 9. Actually, we're going to read 7 through 10. Does anybody want to read those 4 verses? Chantel?
Okay. And cometh a woman of Samaria to draw water. Jesus saith unto her, Give me to drink. For his disciples were gone away to the city to buy meat. And then saith the woman of Samaria unto him, How is it thou being a Jew askest of me, which am a woman of Samaria? For the Jews have no dealings with the Samaritans. Jesus answered and said unto her, If thou knowest the gift of God, and who it is that saith unto thee, Give me to drink, thou wouldst have asked of him, and he would have given thee the living water.
Okay. So what's going on here? And there's a lot of stuff kind of going on under the surface on this, but Jesus has gone to this well, and earlier on in the chapter, it actually says that he had to go here. Now, Jesus is God. He didn't have to go anywhere, did he? You know, nobody was twisting his arm saying, you know, you have to go this route. He had to go there because he had to meet up with this woman. And when he got there, he asked the woman, he said, give me to drink. And her immediate response wasn't, okay, or wasn't just leave me alone and ran the other direction. She says this really interesting thing, and she tells him, she's like, why would you ask this of me, a woman of Samaria? And we're not going to get into any type of crazy political statements or anything tonight, but there was 2 things about this statement that was unbelievable. First thing, she identified herself by her race, a Samaritan. That's what she had been told a way to identify her. And the Jews, they hated the Samaritans. Y'all remember, it's been a few weeks ago, we talked about Nehemiah and how they rebuilt the temple there and stuff like that. What it was a bunch of the people that came with them and inhabited that land, they intermarried with the Jews. And the Jews to them thought that it was impure. And they became the Samaritans. And when she said she was a Samaritan, she's saying, I'm hated for who my people are. And she also identifies herself as a woman also, because honestly in that day, in the Bible, the Jews, nationally, they didn't really look at women that great. And this is something, and I'm going to go down this rabbit trail for just a second, but for people that say that the Bible beats women down, Jesus came and he lifted women up at every moment of his ministry. He made them one of the pure focuses, and that was one of the reasons that the gospel was so attractive to so many people, is because you had one religion and one group of people saying that that a group of people, that even just an entire sex of people and women, were less than. And then here Jesus came, and the closest people in his life to him were women, and he loved them and he took care of them. So if you ever hear anybody say that about, that the Bible beats women down, or does an injustice to women, it's usually because people misinterpret it, to be just really honest, and they put stuff in that it's not there. Because Jesus did so much and treated men, women of all sexes the exact same way. So that's that rabbit trail. But this is the thing. She identified herself by two things that she had absolutely no control on. And we have this problem with ourselves, is we identify people and we put people in boxes based off of some stuff that they can't control and some stuff that they can. What are some things that we can identify people with that they have no control of? Like this woman, she was a Samaritan. She identified herself by the place. If I am born in England, do I have any control over that? Yeah. No. A lot of people, you know how they would identify me? English, yes. I have no control over that. What are some other ways that we identify people, or even identify ourselves, that we have no control over?
I think family and past heritage.
Family, heritage, yeah. That's a really good one. I actually haven't thought about that. That's really good. What else?
This is kind of a superficial thing, but our hair. I know that's, but
I don't know. I've seen a lot of people do some stuff with their hair and change it. They've got a lot to say on it.
hey, they can change it, but also
Mine's
people
leaving. I don't have
but people
much
can
say
make
on that.
judgments based on that.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, I get made I catch a lot of bald jokes, and I have no say in that. I wish I had a big, beautiful head of hair, and I don't. So I have no control over that. What are some other stuff? Height? Yeah, I deal with that one too. I feel attacked. Short and bald. All right.
Or looks, but not what we dress like, but just
Appearance. Just hair, face hair looks. Yeah, that's another one. Yeah. Hey, what else?
I think the social class that you grow up in.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. We do what?
Weight.
Weight.
Some people can't lose weight, so.
I still feel attacked. No, you're right. That's a big one. It's weight for a lot of people is there are health issues and stuff that people can't get around that. And it's not just overweight. We always jump to that. I know a lot, I grew up with some friends that used to make me sick. They weighed 100 pounds soaking wet. They were 6 foot tall, and they could eat 4 large pizzas and lose weight somehow. It's not just, we typically think it's just we're too big, but there's a lot of people that don't have a lot of people, they're I'm too skinny, I wish I could gain weight. So weight's another one. Yes, that's good. What are some other stuff? This is really good.
This is kind of a dumb one, but your accent, where you grew up. I know a lot of people, yes, I know I have a very southern accent, but
it's not as bad until I get you out from among them. And then I don't think Alicia has that bad of an accent until we go out of town, and then she says something and I'm oh.
Everybody's you're not from around here, are you? No,
she says hello and I'm we're gonna get mugged.
They
know we're not from here.
But people make judgments on that because a lot of people look at Southerners sometimes a lot dumber because their accent's a lot slower and.
That's the truth. That absolutely is the truth. So accent. And what else?
how much money your family has.
Yes. Financial, definitely.
If you have, I don't think how to say this. Almost if you're, I'm trying to word this right. A special needs, person compared to somebody else, you look at that person's.
No, absolutely. That's really good. Yeah. People with disabilities compared to people without them. They can't control that, and they are viewed, unfortunately, differently. But yeah. Anything else? Religion. You can choose religion. Hold on to that one though. We're going to talk about that in just a second. So, there's only 1 or 2 groups you're born into that. So, anything else?
Genetics.
Genetics, yeah. Like I'm short, fat, and bald, like we've already tested, so that's genetics. I can't help it. Anything else? Okay. Viewing people by all these different things that we just talked about, is that fair to them? Do you like it when people like view you by those like stigmas and stuff, especially stuff that like you can't control? Like if, when we go out of town, Alicia mentioned accent, and she said that because it's personal. Because when we go out of town, almost everywhere we go, especially if we go up north, she hears, "I love your accent," or "You're not from here," or something
Or
like
on
that.
the phone, through a call center. I get that all the time. Sorry.
All right, see, I told
I'm
y'all.
done.
She gets hot on this. So, all right. So it's not fair to judge people by those, right? And you don't like to be judged by them either, right? Okay. So when she first started talking to Jesus, she told him two things that she could not help, but they were her life situation. And based on that time, she was looked really down on because of that. Was that fair that people looked down on her because of those two things? No. Do you think that she probably struggled with that like during her life, that people viewed her by those two different things? Can you imagine, like, in her case, like just the Samaritan thing, that people thought you were not even, and I know this sounds extreme, but I promise you it's the truth. They didn't look at them as fully human, simply because of where they were born. Do you think that's fair? No. All right. So she had a lot of identity issues that she couldn't help. She was born into it. She couldn't help it. That's just who she was. So she had those issues. As we go on, and if we read through the whole story, and I really encourage you guys to go home and do this. It's awesome. Like I said, it's one of my favorites. She had a lot of issues too that she brought on herself. Jesus tells her, after they have this conversation about the water of life, he tells her, "Hey, go and get your husband," because he wanted to see how she would respond. It's not that he was sitting there and he was like, the next thing she said was like mind blowing. He wanted to hear what she said. He said, "Go and get your husband," and she told him, she's like, I don't have a husband." And she kind of trying to hide it, and it was like a little pulled back, and it wasn't that like she was unmarried or anything like that. But the next thing Jesus said, that was the interesting thing. He said, "You've said right that you don't have a husband, because you've had 5 husbands. And the guy that you're with right now, so he's not even your husband." So she's had 5 husbands, and she's living with a guy. So she had these 2 big stigmas on her. And I'm going somewhere with me on this, guys, okay? So hang on with me. So she had 2 big stigmas on her that she was born with. She couldn't have help those at all. She made some mistakes too in life, right? Okay. So divorce in Bible times, it was frowned on, pretty big. It was acceptable, but it was still this culturally frowned on thing. To be divorced 5 times, even in a pretty like morally fluid culture that we live in today, I don't know many people that have been divorced 5 times. That's unique. I know a couple, but I don't know many that have been married that many times. So, probably, this is me reading in between the lines a little bit. Okay, y'all good with that? Okay. Probably what happened, and we've already talked about this, she struggled with some of these things growing up, right? She struggled with some of these stigmas that, she was treated like dirt by a lot of people simply because of where she was born. She was unfairly treated badly because she was a woman. She struggled with some of these things, and they pushed her to make some bad decisions in her life. So, have any of you guys ever in your life, let's say, someone has labeled you as something, and it has really bothered you, and you have used that to make a bad decision, or you have like kind of let that stack and let that make a bad decision? And I'm not gonna, and I don't want any examples on this. This isn't a Catholic confessional, okay? But and I saw a couple of y'all nodding, some emphatically, like yes, definitely. But like me growing up, like I'll be honest, I joke about my weight a lot and my height and stuff like that. Growing up, how I used to deal with that was I would make fun of myself first, so no one else would. And in some ways it worked okay, But when somebody would maybe, they would make fun of my height and they would say something about how short I was. I would take that, they would identify me as that, and I would lash out. And I would say stuff, and remember, I wasn't a Christian, I would say stuff that I shouldn't say. And I would flip out on them. That's what I'm talking about here. You're identified as something, and you let it push you into other things. So like this woman that she had 5 husbands and then she was living with a guy. What are some things that other people deal with, some labels that people get put on of decisions that they make? Like religion. Chloe started that one out with that one. You know, people make the decision on religion. And some people are labeled based on that religion. Some for good reasons, some for bad. But people are labeled for their religion. But what are some other reasons? Or what are some other labels that people get based off their decisions? This one's harder, I know.
Actions, like just their actions.
Actions,
Reputation.
Huh?
Reputation.
Reputation, yeah. That you know, our actions, like it's well documented. I get mad. Okay, we know that. So like, if I make the decision to get mad a lot, could people label me as a hothead?
Yeah.
Okay, and that's a decision that I make. I know sometimes we struggle with it, and we can struggle with that. But you still have a choice. So I can be a hothead. So that's one. Reputation. That's one. You know, being known as just anything really. That's one. What about other ones?
Lifestyle.
Lifestyle. Yeah. Like specifically, what's a lifestyle that you could choose that would be like looked at badly? Nobody's gonna look at you and be like, "Oh, Mason's jacked up."
People that do drugs and all that.
Drugs. That's a choice that people make. I had someone message me this week asking me to pray for a teenager that they know because they were really struggling with drinking. That's a choice they make. And a lot of times that's developed out of something else that maybe they can't control. It's a coping mechanism or something like that. But drinking, drugs, those are stuff. What else?
Think back to high school, if you were focused on your schoolwork, you were considered weird, a teacher's pet, or abnormal to compare to if it wasn't what you're doing over the weekend, or
It's weird because you care.
yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So, anything else?
Dress.
How you dress, yes. That says a lot in a lot of ways. A lot of people they put a lot of weight on that. So, what else? I knew this one would be harder.
Gossiping.
Gossiping, yes, that's a big one.
Can
And,
I, go ahead.
I was gonna say, and so many people struggle with that one because it's like most people are cool with gossip until it's about them. You know, until it's the gossip they haven't heard. You know, when you're sitting around and people are talking about someone, like if me and Jude are sitting over here talking about Alicia, like I think it's awesome. She doesn't, but this is great. And then he goes back there and he starts talking about me, and I'm like, I can't believe he's gossiping. And that's how we treat it. What were you gonna say?
I think kind of like Alicia said, how you dress, but modesty, if you act a certain way and you try to follow certain morals, people think you think better of yourself, or you.
I think you're stuck up for
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Anything else?
Like who you're friends with.
Who you're friends with? Yeah, that says a lot. Yeah, that can be definitely. Anything else? All right. So, and we're all, in some ways, we're all guilty of some of this stuff, right? You know, Mason brought up drugs, so we know he's a junkie. I've never talked to your parents after service, but you know, we are. We choose different ways to act, to dress, to behave, and we choose all these different things. And we're all guilty of some of this stuff, and some of the ways, some of the stuff we've mentioned, some of the stuff we haven't. You know, I was just joking with Jude a minute ago about me and him gossiping about Alicia. Would you like it if people thought of you as a gossip? Would you like if you came walking through the door and I was like, "There's that gossip"? Are you going to enjoy that? It's probably going to make you mad, isn't it? Okay, so we don't like to be categorized as that, right? What about another one? This is one that we can all get a little better on. What about if you tell lies? That's a big one, right? You know, do you want to be categorized as a liar? Even if it's for something good, like you're trying to save someone's feelings. Like if like Alicia tries something on and I'm like, oh, that looks beautiful, just because I'm trying to save her feelings, and it really doesn't. Like, is that lie still okay? No, it's not. You have to be creative in the ways that you do stuff. But she looks beautiful.
You know that well.
Just kind of, but this is the thing. We all have stuff that we're identified with, that we can help, and we all have stuff that we're identified with that we can't help. And it's not fair to be identified in any of those different things, because we're all so much more than an opinion, or we're all so much more than somebody else's putting a label on you, right? We're all a little bit more complex than that. So this woman, she really struggled with her identity. You know, from the very beginning, she didn't say, my name is Susan. She didn't say that my name, I love God. I worship up in the mountain in our temple. She didn't say any of those things. The first thing she identified herself with were negative things that she thought that was the only thing people saw about her. And you see, Jesus, when he looked at her, he didn't see that. He didn't see her as a Samaritan. He didn't see her as a woman. He didn't see her as a chronic marrier. He didn't see her as any of those things. He looked at her and he saw somebody that God loved, period. And he began to talk to her and encourage her and tell her how she could have the kind of love and the kind of acceptance that she wanted more than anything. And this is where, like, he starts to really get into it with her. But a lot of times we identify ourselves as these things, right? You know, I joke about my height, my receding hairline. I joke about my weight and stuff like that. A lot. I identify myself as a lot of that. You identify yourself as a lot of things. Some fairly. You know, if I say I'm short, I am. I'm not being unfair. If I sat up here and I was like, I can't believe I can't remember this, I'm so stupid. You know, I'm not identifying myself like I'm not stupid. I'm not a rocket scientist, but I'm not stupid. When I get really down on myself, I'm horrible about identifying myself as I suck, I'm horrible, I can't believe I'm this bad. Does anybody else struggle, like, especially when you get really beat down, you just like start like kind of railing on yourself and you're like, I'm this, I'm this, I'm this, I'm this. All right. When God looks at you, he doesn't see that. And that's why coming to him and resting in him, like we were talking about at the very beginning, is so important. Because when he looked at her, he saw somebody that God loved, somebody that God created. And when he looks at you, he sees somebody that God loved and loves and created. That's it. And in that truth, that's where we can find so many things. And he wants to give you, and he wants to remind you of some things that you're identified with that, frankly, we need to remember. He wants to remind you that you're loved. And for so many of us, and you know, some of us, we can kind of get some thick skin and we can kind of put up some walls and we can kind of be like, I'm good, you know, I don't care who likes me. But at our core, we all want to be loved. You know, nobody sits around and they're like, man, how can I make everybody mad today? How can I push literally everybody in my life away? Nobody sits around and thinks like that. We all want to be loved. And there's no place that we can find love more than in God. God is love, John wrote. So if God is love, where can we find a more pure version and a more pure experience of love than in him? So tonight, he wants you to know that you are loved beyond anything else. That's where you start out with. You are loved, every one of you. The other thing is, and when you're dealing with labels, one of the things that we can tend to do is we can kind of devalue ourselves. We can look at ourselves as less than we really are, and we can cut ourselves down. And we can think less of ourselves because we think that everybody else does, right? So why would I think highly of myself if everybody thinks I'm some loser and I suck and I'm horrible? But you see God, and in this message, you see in this conversation with the woman at the well, he's telling her, you're valued. And you see, God values every single human being on the face of the earth. Whether they accept him or not, he values them. And for his children, he values you so deeply that he gave his son so that he would come and he would die on the cross for every one of us. He came and he died on the cross if you were the only person that needed it. If Luke was the only sinner that ever lived, that's possible. Jesus still would have come to die on the cross so that he could have had a way to be with God. So he values us enough to give up his most prized possession and watch him be tortured, hung on the cross, and die, and killed simply so that he can have a relationship with you. Man, we sound pretty important now, don't we? This doesn't sound like just something, we don't, in those moments where we're like labeling ourselves all those bad things or other people are, man, this is the kind of stuff that we need to remember. We're loved, we're valued. We're important. Man, we that's one of my like pet peeves, and that's one of my like kind of like hang ups. If I'm going to be really honest with you guys, like when I feel like I'm just kind of pushed off to the side, and like my opinion is not valued, or like people don't care what I think or anything like that, I struggle with that. So God reminds me that like my life and my contribution, my just existence, man, it's important to him. And yours is too. You've all been created for a single purpose. No, not a single purpose. I'll take that back. You've been created for a lot of purposes. You've been created to tell people about Jesus. You've been created to worship God. You've been created to do specific acts on this earth. Maybe it's to teach. Maybe it's to preach. Maybe it's to be a deacon. Maybe it's to be a missionary. Maybe it's to serve in the homeless ministry or the feeding ministries, or maybe it's to do something just beyond that. Maybe it's to be a faithful follower of Christ all your life. You've all been called to that one. I was hoping someone would be like, yeah, we all have. But you've all been created for something, for many things. You're extremely important to God and to God's plan. You're extremely important to that. Man, that's something special. And this is one of the biggest things. And this is something that I want you to make sure you know. When we deal with all these labels, and we deal especially with the way that people view us, man, we can feel really unwanted. And we can feel really pushed out. Maybe we feel unwanted by family. Maybe we feel unwanted by friends. Maybe we feel unwanted by just everybody. This is another area I struggle with. And we might feel unwanted, but we're kind of going back to where we were at first. It had been really easy for God just to leave Jesus in heaven and just let us go about our lives. It had been really easy for him to do that. But he wanted every single one of us to be in heaven with him. I think it's Peter, he says that it's not God's will that any should perish. He wants every single person to accept Jesus, to be saved. And you're wanted tonight. So whether family, you feel like maybe family doesn't want you, whether maybe it's friends, whether maybe it's just the people around you, man, I'm here tonight to tell you that you are desperately wanted by God. And by more. Man, but I'm not going to go down that road. But you're desperately wanted by God. This is the kind of message that he was telling this woman at the well. Is that she was loved, she was valued, she was important, she was wanted. Those are the kind of labels that we are really identified with. Not the kind of things that people give us. Not the kind of labels that people tell us. Not the kind of labels that we tell ourselves. Because I know y'all. A lot of y'all are like me. And you're your hardest critic. I'm horrible with myself. Alicia gets mad at me all the time over this and like fusses at me. Because I am my worst critic. And I know that some of you guys are like that with yourselves too. Man, we could like stand you up here and every one of us could talk about how awesome you are for 2 hours and you'd go home and you'd be like, I suck. They didn't talk for 2 hours and 15 minutes about it. And a lot of us are that way. We could do that with me, and I'd go home and I would overthink, and I would find one thing that like was like misunderstood or something like that, and I'd be like, do you think they meant this? And that's all I would focus on. You know, and I've joked with you guys. You can give people gold, and they would fuss about a smudge on it sometimes. But guys, God has several labels for you, much more than what I've gone over tonight. But the next time you're feeling beat down, man, write these down and like put them in a note in your phone or something. And next time you're feeling beat down, next time you're feeling like you're struggling or something like that, go over this and remember, man, I am loved. I am valued. I am important. I'm wanted. And you can find every bit of that at the cross. That's where you find the truth of how valued you are, how wanted you are, how loved you are, how important you are. Not in what other people say. Not even in what you say to you about yourself. But you find your value at the cross. And if you keep going back to that place, you'll be so much happier. You'll be so much more encouraged. When you think about the people around you, maybe you're about to slip into maybe saying something to them or labeling them, think about the cross. Because Jesus felt that way about you, but he feels that way about them too. You see a mindset like this can change everything. This can change how you deal with people. This can change how you deal with yourselves. And it can absolutely change how you walk as a person, as a Christian. But you have to be willing to make the decision to do it. You have to be conscious of it. You have to start there. You can't expect yourself when you're at your very worst to think about the best things. You have to make a decision before it ever comes. So if you guys would bow your heads and close your eyes. I want to ask you this tonight.